Hey, Typology Tribe, Ian Morgan Cron here. I'm in the Typology Studios with my dear friend...
Anthony Skinner.
Ian
Cron. How are you doing, brother?
Well, I'm all the better for seeing you.
Oh, same. Hey, I'm super excited about our guest today, Ian. As you know, in December, we take some time to play some of our most revered fan faves, and this was definitely a big fan fave the first go-around.
Yeah, and I suspect she will be today.
Yes, agreed.
Anne Bogel.
Anne Bogel.
Yes, she is the author of Reading People and her other book, I'd Rather Be Reading. She's the creator of the blog Modern Mrs. Darcy and host of the podcasts What Should I Read Next and One Great Book. All right, I love Anne Bogel, number one, because the two of us share a real love for reading. She has a brand new book out right now. Mm-hmm. It's called Don't Overthink It. Make easier decisions, stop second guessing, and bring more joy to your life. And you know, I'm excited because she's an Enneagram 9. And when I saw that she had written a book called Don't Overthink It, Make Easier Decisions, etc., I was like, holy smokes, a 9 is going to teach us about not overthinking and making better decisions, which quite frankly is typically not the gift set one associates with 9s.
Right? That's right.
So, I can't wait to jump into a conversation with a 9 about something she's clearly had to do a lot of work around.
Right.
And, she's written books about personality, so this is a second language for her.
Yeah.
She really... This is going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. Can't wait.
That's right. So everybody, put on your seatbelts. We're going to have a great ride today with my guest, Anne Bogel. Anne Bogel, welcome to Typology.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be back. Thank you, Ian.
I am so excited about your new book.
Oh, thank you for that.
Don't Overthink It is the name of the book. And I'm really excited about talking to you about it because you're an Enneagram 9.
I am indeed.
The peacemaker. And you are one of those types that tends to overthink things. And you're one of those types who, like 6s, struggles with decision making, which I also know is a big feature of your new book. For the sake of everyone listening, brief arc of what the book is about, and then I am going to jump in because, I looked at the title of the book and I'm like, an Enneagram 9 is writing a book about don't overthink things and decision making, and I'm like, either this girl is totally in denial or she has done a lot of really good work on herself, which I think is probably the case, and I just can't wait to jump into it. Let everyone know what the book's about.
Well, I was guilty of some massive overthinking just yesterday. So there's that. So Ian, we all know what overthinking is, right? Repetitive, unhealthy, unhelpful thoughts. Your brain is working really hard, but it's getting absolutely nowhere. It's exhausting and it makes you feel like garbage. So as a type 9, you're so right. I have had my fair share of overthinking. What really interests me in writing this book is not only being able to share what I have learned about overcoming overthinking, because I'm not a psychotherapist, I'm not an expert, but I'm a person who've learned some things that I put into action in my life and they've made a huge difference. And if I can help others by sharing those things, then I'd love to see them turn things around. And the reason is, the thing that really captured me about this topic is I found that so many of us think that overthinking is this annoying thing we do sometimes. It's obnoxious, but it's kind of value neutral. But I've really come to see that overthinking comes at a huge opportunity cost. What we're doing with our hours and our minutes is what we're doing with our lives. And we don't want to spend our lives overthinking. So I'd love to see people put this practice aside so they can really spend more time on the things that matter and bring more peace, love, and joy into their lives. Because when you're overthinking, that is what you're losing.
Awesome. What a great praise of that book, man. And I can't wait to read it. Because I do think you're absolutely right that we live in a culture. If for no other reason, I think we suffer from optionality fatigue. I can't go to the freaking store to buy sneakers without being overwhelmed by 6,000 possible new iterations of running shoes and so I think if nothing else, that in itself is a cultural problem. And of course, there's just neuroscience that says pretty much that 80% of our thoughts are not new. You know what I'm saying? Like we tend to overthink about the same things all the time as well. Is that your experience?
Personally, yes. And also that's definitely what I found in the research.
So tell me what it was yesterday that you were overthinking.
Oh, it was a blog post about my new book.
Okay. You were overthinking
How's
about
that for
overthinking?
meta? Yeah. I mean, I wanted to tell a little story, and what I thought was, well, this might be more interesting with some background. Ooh, but there's background to that story. And I just kept taking it back. And at a certain point, you have to decide, what are you actually talking about? Like, what is the scope of this? And, 50 minutes later, I ended up, do you want to guess where I ended up?
Where?
Right back at the place I started.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've done that 1,000 times while writing a book. That would be absolutely...
Oh, that's funny because it's so relatable.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. So you do self-describe as a chronic overthinker. You just gave us an example of it. Can you give us, through the lens of the Enneagram, or let me ask you this. How has the Enneagram helped you understand yourself and your tendency to overthink?
Oh, that's really interesting. Well, I'm a type 9, so I am very aware that I like to step back and look at all the options. I see whole landscapes of possibilities that other people simply don't see. And Ian, I think that's a real gift. Like, I love that part of being a 9. But it was really eye-opening and also extremely helpful for me to see that same ability also could get me into all kinds of trouble. Because when you see landscapes that other people just don't see, that means you see choices that other people just don't have to deal with. And it really helped me understand, why is this hard? Also, I'm a 9, and I'm right there next to that 1. And perfectionism and overthinking so often go hand in hand.
Hey everybody, one of the lessons I've learned over the years is that not everybody benefits from a traditional 50-minute counseling session. And this is why some people can go to couples therapy or personal counseling for a long time and never really get anywhere. This is why I'm such a believer of intensive counseling and my friends at Restoring the Soul in Colorado, created by my longtime friend Michael Cusick to help couples or individuals experience deep change in half-day blocks over 1 or 2 weeks. Now listen, if you can't wait months or years to get to the bottom of an issue or to experience breakthrough, you need to get in touch with my friend Michael and his extraordinary team of counselors at Restoring the Soul. If you're looking to get out of the rut you're in, but can't wait months or years, call Restoring the Soul today for a free consultation with Michael's staff. Call 303-932-9777 and learn how their intensive counseling process can help you. As a special bonus, just for Typology listeners, make sure to visit www.restoringthesoul.com/typology to download their PDF called 5 Ways Unaddressed Trauma May Be Derailing Your Relationships. Okay, I want you to unpack that more because perfectionism is a huge problem for people. Whether you're, any number can be a perfectionist. Ones happen to be, masterful at it. 4s, I think, are the second most perfectionist number on the Enneagram. Talk to me about perfectionism for a minute and how it screws up thinking for you as a 9.
Oh, well, I call myself a recovering perfectionist, but it's something that I still notice myself doing reflexively all the time. When you're committed to getting the best option or the right, picture those air quotes, the right option in any circumstance, that means that you need to do the work to make sure that your option is the best one. And you need to compare it to other options. And you need to keep looking to make sure no other better options sneak up. And you make so many decisions every day. If you want them all to be correct and you're putting this pressure on yourself to get it right the first time every time, that consumes an enormous amount of mental energy, an impossible amount of mental energy. Nobody has that much. So you exhaust yourself on the things that really don't matter, and then you don't have any mental resources left to deal with the things that really do.
Right. Oh, that is so good. So, nines, we talk a lot about the inner sanctum of nines. Do you know about that?
From you, I do.
Oh, from me, you do. Well, for those of you who don't, when overwhelmed or when conflict threatens, sometimes nines can tune out, right? And withdraw into this place in their minds we call the inner sanctum, right? And in that space, they uncouple from life's energy and ignore the call to action on something. And that's, my wife describes it as a 9. Like she goes up and you can see sometimes they kind of get this spacey, far off, looking, getting the 1,000-mile distance look, and on the outside, it looks very calm, but on the inside, things are going crazy in terms of decision making and what do I do? What do I do? So how is that for you as a 9, and what disciplines have you learned to get yourself out of that space?
That's so interesting. What I found most helpful is to anticipate that and plan for it. It's winter right now, so this isn't necessarily my coping mechanism of choice in the summertime, but it's cold outside. And so we have the jigsaw puzzles out. I love puzzles so much, Ian. I'm going to be such a great 80-year-old. I'm like in training, ready to go. But that's just an example of a way that I can give myself some space, give my brain something to focus on that definitely requires thought and mental energy, but it's a different kind than I'm spending throughout my day. And it gives me the opportunity to regroup, to solve a solvable problem in a way that doesn't involve any potential for whining or lashing out at other people.
All right, what are some not so obvious ways that we overthink?
Ooh, okay. Well, to me, the perfectionism-driven overthinking was huge. I just didn't see the connection, but once I did, it made so much sense. I find that the things that we don't think of as being overthinking until we really take the time to articulate it as such is when we talk ourselves out of good things. I don't know what your experience is being a man. I know for many women, we have this inner critic in our brain that says, don't burn the good candle. Don't buy the flowers. Buy the generic, even though you like the name brand chocolate a lot more. But if you pay attention, if you relate to this, listeners, and you listen to what's going on in your brain at the grocery store, just think about how you monitor the decisions you are making and see if you aren't maybe conversing with yourself more than is necessary about what choices you want to make. And if you aren't talking yourself out of potentially good things that you really enjoy, that don't cost a lot of money, that don't take extra effort, just because you think that you don't need it or there's not a reason right now. We think our way out of happiness so many times. Rarely do we think our way into it unless we do it on purpose. And there's no need for this. I think we do it out of habit and out of long time training from our childhood.
This is so great. My wife is a quintessential 1-to-1 9, okay? And she is doing so much work. In fact, later today, we're doing, for the very first time, a podcast interview with just my wife and I talking about our growth as a result of the Enneagram and some other things in our lives. And it's been revolutionary. So here's another reason I think 9s overthink things, okay? Mm-hmm. My wife went to some kind of craft thing in Georgia, some town where they do a lot of these, like a big craft town or something. And she saw a Johnny Was jacket. Okay, this beautiful embroidered, coat made by Johnny Was, and it was expensive, right? I mean, it was like $500 or $600. All right, and she texts me a picture of it, and she's like, "I don't know if I should get it. I mean, it's really expensive, blah blah blah." And maybe I
relate to that soundtrack.
Oh, okay, and maybe I could find it for 20% off somewhere in Nashville, blah blah blah. And I just texted back to her, and I said, "Well, number one, you don't need to ask me whether or not you can buy that coat. You can, and here's the other reason why this was happening as a 9. It was because she didn't think she deserved it. Like she wasn't special enough to deserve it. And I think that's a little bit of what you're describing. Sometimes in the grocery store, you're like, I should probably buy the generic brand, the chocolate brand. You know what I'm saying? It's like to stop and say, and I'm not talking about buying a Maserati here, but what I'm talking about is sometimes 9s will see things that they want, and then they go, because they have this tendency to think their presence doesn't matter, that they're not as important as other people. They think it's kind of selfish to indulge themselves that way. So what does she do, right? I told her to get it and she didn't get it, right? So, and she said, I couldn't make up my mind. I was just sort of on the fence. So we came home, and down here at a mall in Nashville, there's a Johnny Was store. And I said, is that coat in that dang store? And she said, yeah. And I said, I am getting in the car right now, and I am driving to Johnny Was, and I'm going to buy you that dang coat because you deserve it and you've overthought it. I just think you ought to have it. Now, was it a little, $600 for a coat, is that a little crazy? Sure. But I can just tell you from experience, my wife never indulges in herself. She self-forgets like most 9s. I have to actually say to her, hey, go do this for yourself. So I totally relate to what you're saying. And what it requires, I think for all types, and you described it, is the development of a neutral inner witness who in the moment can observe their way they're thinking and then step back from it compassionately and say, you're overthinking this, and, wake up and choose in this moment not to overthink it. But that takes the ability to step back from your thought patterns, observe them, and make a new choice.
And that metacognition is not easy. Something else I want to point out is that your wife was struggling with whether or not to buy a $600 jacket, but we also torment ourselves about buying a Pilot G2. This is a pen that costs $1.19 at Walgreens because we have a free one from the bank that'll work just fine. I find that with these big splurges, though, is that we get stuck when we don't know how to think about a problem. Like my mom taught me how to shop when I was little for clothes. And if I was looking at this nice coat, she would ask me, okay, what is your cost per wear going to be? How many times are you going to wear that? So now if I look at buying something expensive, I know that I've been taught to think about this kind of problem in this specific way. But there are situations we face in our life where the logic just breaks down. Like you can't think about buying a prom dress or a wedding dress in terms of cost per wear. It just doesn't work. And so if the way we've been taught to think about a problem fails us, I find that we flounder as we try to grasp for another way to even think about the problem.
That is so really good for 9s.
Yeah.
I mean, that is such good news for 9s. And I hope 9s, male and female, because I think men and women both struggle with this, to begin to have almost a decision-making matrix. That's kind of what you're describing.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Right?
I mean, I don't have a flow chart on my wall or anything, but over time, if you pay attention, if you do step back and assess the way you're thinking about a problem, you can consciously take note of how you apply different decision-making frameworks to different decisions.
Okay, that's so great. Keep going.
I mean, anyone who's ever bought Hamilton tickets is not doing it because of the enjoyment they'll get per minute. They're buying it for the experience, for the memories, for the once-in-a-lifetime feel of it. And if you've been 10 times, we don't really want to hear about that, but we're jealous. But you're choosing based on something. When you choose to do that big splurge, when you buy tickets for the big thing, when you fly across the country to see a person, you're doing it because you know that it matters to you and you know why. But it can be surprisingly difficult to grasp at first why one decision requires one decision-making approach and another seemingly similar decision requires a totally different approach.
Hey, Anthony.
Hey, Ian.
What if I told you you could get high quality, organic, and non-GMO groceries delivered to your door for a lot less than you're paying now and help out families in need?
I would definitely want to know more about it.
Let me tell you, that's what I'm doing since I discovered Thrive Market. As a proud Thrive Market member, I get the products I love, and my paid membership provides a free membership for a low-income family.
Wow, this is really great. I love this.
All right?
Yeah.
So let me tell you this. I've ordered off their website, which, by the way, is very user-friendly. It's not at all like one of those websites where you feel like you just fell into some kind of terrible labyrinth. They have a couple of things I love. They have Jackson's Honest Sweet Potato Chips. Have you ever had those?
No.
You're welcome.
All right.
Jackson's Honest Sweet Potato Chips I got there. And,
Yep.
you know, I used to be a Go Lean cereal guy, right? Because I'm so healthy. But now I eat organic coconut flakes cereal from Thrive Market.
Can't wait to try that.
Right? It's changing my whole life. Now, as a special offer for Typology listeners, try Thrive Market and become a member risk-free. Just go to thrivemarket.com/typology.
That's right, Ian. Join today and you'll get a free gift of your choosing up to $24 in value. Tell them where to go again, Ian.
That's Thrive, THRIVE, market.com/typology, TYPOLOGY, to start your risk-free membership and
get a free gift today. Just go to thrivemarket.com/typology.
Here, I have a silly story for you.
Okay.
Okay. I went to Scotland last year, and we had a great week. It was magical. But I had one lingering regret, and it's going to sound super silly. We love the Great British Baking Show in my house.
Oh my gosh, we are absolutely,
Right.
Ask Anthony,
Yes.
addicted. We watched, like when we finished watching all the seasons, we mourned for like 2 days.
It just brings me so much peace and joy. And also, as a 9, it's about the only reality TV I can watch. And I still cry every time somebody goes home. No joke, every time. But when we went to Scotland, I saw baked goods in the display cases that I had only ever seen at the Great British Baking Show. I can't get them in the US. I definitely can't get them in Kentucky. So I came home from the trip and I told my kids about all these amazing baked goods we saw. We even saw a Bakewell tart. And they said, "Oh my gosh, Mom, what did it taste like?" And I said, "I have no idea. I don't eat a lot of sugar. I just didn't try it." And they were like, "That was a bad decision." And yes, it was. And I realized, I knew that I had left Scotland not trying this Bakewell tart, and it really bothered me. And I thought, that's silly. Why is it bothering me so much that I didn't try this dessert when I don't even eat dessert that much? And I realized, as I kept thinking about this, because it was pestering me, that I had made a decision in Scotland, someplace I'd never been, might not ever go again, but I hope so, this special, unique adventure. I decided whether or not I wanted dessert based on, is it really healthy for me to have sugar right then? Ian, I was in Scotland. I should have made the decision based on, hey, I'm here to try new things, so let's try new things. It cost $3.
Right.
If I had had a bite of Bakewell tart, which might have been terrible, but that would have been a story too, and I would still have had the experience. $3 for one bite, the rest could have just gone in the trash or to a friend, and it would have been the right call. But I was making what looked like the right decision for my normal life. I mean, I thought I was making a decision about what to eat, but that wasn't at all what the decision was about. The decision was about, do I want to have this new experience? And it's still a piece of cake either way, but it's a totally different way of thinking about it. And I've really learned that if we can look at the decisions we're facing in our life, so many of them, the question is not what you think it's about. There's a question behind the question. And you can really get in the habit of zoning in on that question behind the question faster. Once you know what to look for, once you get the hang of it, and it makes decisions so much easier. And it really prevents you from texting your friend or husband going, I don't know what I should do. Help me figure this out. What should I do? Should I buy it? Should I not? If you can see what's really at stake, not at stake exactly, but what really the issue is, then it brings so much clarity. And then you can move forward.
Okay. So just jumping back for 1 second about the coat. I just want to say that we have gotten our money per wear out of that coat. Since my wife has bought that coat, I think she has worn it to bed several times because she loves it that much. I just want to make it clear that we have gotten a tremendous amount of value out of that coat. But now,
well, even if she hadn't worn it 600 times, someone told me that if you have also been raised with a cost per wear mentality and can't imagine like spending the big bucks for something you'll only wear a few times a year, that the love per wear you get out of an item
that's good.
It's a different way to think about it.
Oh man, I love this. I want to just maybe let people know something about nines that I find so fascinating. And that is, we got nines perched at the top of the Enneagram, right? So if you think about the two sides, right? Mm-hmm. They have one foot in 3 and the other foot in 6. Do you see that? So they're up So 3 and 6. Okay. So what people may not know is that 3s are the most compliant number on the Enneagram. Okay. And 6s are the most nonconformist, anti-authoritarian number on the other gram. So what happens for them sometimes is they get torn between wanting to please at 3 and defy at 6, right? When they're faced with a decision, then sometimes they'll smile and look calm on the outside, but on the inside, right, they're actually all stirred up because the nonconformist side wants to say no and the conformist side wants to say yes. How does that ring with your experience?
Yes. Can you hear me nodding? That's so interesting that you say that, because when I think about when I move towards 3, when I think about the 3s, I know conformity is not something I think of, but to hear you put it that way is really interesting. But especially as a female, the like smiling and nodding on the outside and being really mad about it on the inside is something that resonates.
I wonder
to an uncomfortable degree.
Do you think that's a gender thing, or do you think it's a 9 thing?
That's interesting. I wonder if it's not both and. I'm sure the Enneagram is so much about socialization, but I think that as a woman, I've been socialized to smile and nod.
Right.
Especially in my family of origin.
Okay. So you're absolutely right. I think, there are cultural pressures that help form our personalities, obviously. But I do think there's part of us in our type there are patterns that are just warp and woof of who we are, right? In our types. And if we can begin to develop that inner witness, and I love what you said, and I think it's actually like a mantra for me, which is pay attention to what you pay attention to.
Yes.
Right? Paying attention is like an Enneagram discipline. Pay attention to what you're thinking. Pay attention to what you're feeling. Pay attention to what you're doing. Are you on autopilot right now, or in your personality patterns, or are you awake and making free choices based on a different, set of values and desires? Right. So I guess for me, in those moments, I think for 9s, when they're sort of stuck between being a conformist and being a defier, right? If they can just step back and pay attention, they won't get lost in that nether zone between the two, and then smile on the outside, because what happens is they'll smile and say yes on the outside, but on the inside, what they'll do is slow things down if they didn't want to do it, so that everything gets behind schedule and everything gets kind of discombobulated.
That's so interesting, because something that I found so tremendously helpful in overcoming overthinking is just like I was talking about with the Bakewell tart, is figure out what you care about, make it a habit of living out your values, and then what you do flows naturally out of who you are. And what you're describing is the 9 with 1 foot in 3 and 1 foot in 6, wanting to do 2 things simultaneously that are impossible to do at the same time. There's no flow because you can't be both.
Absolutely. All right. Now
so you're just stuck.
Yep. Yeah. You're just stuck. And then what happens for nines is they become fence sitters. And then and what they do is they're sitting on the fence because if making a decision might lead to conflict, right? So they're trying to avoid conflict and maintain inner peace, or they're waiting for life to come along and make the decision for them, right? Which, as you know, rarely ends well.
Funny because it's true.
Because decision making takes courage.
It really does.
Right? It really takes courage. Hey, Typology Tribe. I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors for helping us bring you what I hope is great content every week. Now, you all know I'm a big proponent of counseling. Whether you feel like something is interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving certain goals, counseling is a great tool to help identify what those blocks are and then work through them. Yet finding a therapist can sometimes feel intimidating, but not with BetterHelp. BetterHelp offers online counseling at your own time and your own pace. You can schedule secure video or phone sessions plus text and chat with your therapist when it's convenient for you. These are licensed professional counselors who specialize in things like depression, anxiety, stress, relationships, LGBT matters, trauma, and grief. BetterHelp has counselors available worldwide and have over 3,000 U.S. licensed therapists across all 50 states. In fact, so many people have been using BetterHelp that they are recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states. And get this, if you're not satisfied with your counselor for any reason, you can request a new one at any time at no additional cost. Best of all, it's a truly affordable option. I want you to start living a happier life today. As a listener, you'll get 10% off your first month by visiting betterhelp.com/typologypodcast. Join over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/typologypodcast. TYPOLOGYPODCAST. All right, so we've talked about decisions, my wife's coat experience, your experience with the cake, which is not silly because cakes are very important to me. What about big decisions in life? Like, what about when you're faced with, should we have another child? My child is sick and there's two courses of action that we can take here. The doctors recommend. Which one should we take? You know what I mean? Like the really big decisions in life. Are they different than the day-to-day decisions and how you treat them?
That's so interesting because everything in me wants to say, yes, of course they are. Big decisions require big thoughts. And yet at the same time, Ian, so many of us, including myself for sure, have made hugely important decisions really quickly, going from my gut, just knowing in my core that it was the right thing. So that's difficult to answer. I do want to say that in the book, when I'm talking about overthinking, it's not saying don't think, but it's not overthinking if you're giving something the amount of thought you want to. That could be like, let's say it brings you joy and entertainment to research 40 different destinations for your summer vacation. It's not overthinking if you give it the amount of attention you want to. And at the same time, if you're deciding if you want to have another child, that's a big decision. And talk about a decision requiring courage. It's not overthinking if you're giving something the amount of attention it deserves. And yet at the same time, especially as a 9, I'm very aware that it's possible to think and think and think and think, and it's not productive. And I can think so long that the opportunity itself can pass me by.
So I think what you're describing, that is sort of a wonderful revelation for me, is what in Enneagram vernacular we call right action. So there comes a moment when the 9 is faced with a decision or a circumstance that they just have this gut feeling. I have to do this no matter what. I have to take this action. No matter how much conflict it might cause, no matter how much of a headache it's going to cause, no matter if it's going to actually destroy a relationship that I have, I must take this action. And then they just go for it. They just don't overthink it. They just go for it, and make a decision. So I think that's maybe that's what you're describing, are those right action moments.
It might be. I will say, when you're asking this question, I was put in mind of a book that I read maybe 5-6 years ago by the Heath brothers. It's kind of a businessy book. It's called Decisive: How to Make Better Choices in Life and Work. But I've come back to look at it over the years because one of the very practical and also scary decisions that they show someone making in the book is the choice of whether or not to have extreme surgery. I think it was perhaps a heart transplant. I'm not positive about the heart transplant, but I know it was a major medical decision that was optional, but it wouldn't be optional for long. And they really explored how this person approached this massive decision. And I found it so interesting that something like that just seems terrifying. Should you have this surgery which is not without risks, but could really transform your life for the better, could make it so you live to see your kids grow up, or do you stick with what you've got, which is a sure thing, but only for maybe another decade? Like, how do you face a question like that? So when I say, how do you face a question like that? I would think it's rhetorical, but they walked through how exactly this person faced a question like that. And it was fascinating to me.
Sounds like
as someone who's more a gut person, they were approaching it from a very rational, linear perspective, which does not come naturally to me, Ian. And I really appreciated seeing Broken Down.
Wow.
I hope I never have to make a decision like that, but people do. And it was good to see that there are at least paths forward that aren't just, I don't know, throw darts at the wall or hope for the best.
I think in terms of strategies for what to do with overthinking and decision making and how it relates to the Enneagram, when 9s are not in a great space, right? They go to, or I should say, don't be surprised if you go to the low side of 6, right? And when you're there, you have more anxiety than you normally do, more self-doubt, decision-making becomes harder, you become a little bit more paranoid and worst-case scenario thinking, like if I buy this jacket, we won't eat for the next month. And you may be more inclined to play follow the leader, because the leader, you will sort of acquiesce to what the leader wants, right? Because that'll maintain the peace and get you off the hook a little bit, right? And what you want to do, maybe if a 9 is faced with overthinking and having trouble making decisions, is to pay attention and decide to go toward the high side of 3, which is their security point, where, they can start to make a more linear decision or path like the one you were describing in that book by the Heath brothers. So, I mean, I hope that, 9s who find themselves in that position think, how do I get to 3 right now? How do I get to a place where I'm putting together a decision tree almost? Have you got a decision tree? Okay, when I'm faced with a decision.
I'm a 9, so it's not an actual tree. I mean, I don't know that I could flow chart it for you. And yet, I do, I kind of do.
Yeah.
What you're describing right now really reminds me of something I used to habitually do in any decision involving spending a lot of money. I'm a saver by nature. My brother's a huge spender by nature. I don't know if this is biology or if the birth order had been reversed, we would have turned out differently. I don't know. But spending a lot of money makes me feel uncomfortable. Maybe I feel like I don't deserve it. I don't know. But I know that it doesn't feel good. So I used to habitually do this thing where I'd spend a lot of money and I'd promptly go exactly that low 6 place they're thinking about. Oh my gosh, what have we done? Can we get it back? Can I take it back? Can I return it? Can I get the money? Will it be okay? How much is in the bank? Can I undo it? What was I thinking? Like, every time I would go that place. And I wasn't consciously striving for the high side of 3, but what I've learned to tell myself is like, you're doing this for a purpose. You chose this for a purpose. Like you are, let's say I bought tickets to something expensive, but that I really wanted to go to. This is going to be enjoyable. This makes sense for you. This is in line with your values. That's something that I came to coincidentally and with the help of other people in my life who are not type 9s. But your description of going from low 6 to high 9 really makes sense to me.
Well, Anne Bogel's new book, Don't Overthink It, Make Easier Decisions, Stop Second Guessing, and Bring More Joy to Your Life on Baker Books, coming out March 3rd, 2020. I'm so excited to get my hands on it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And I think it's going to be a great book for Enneagram Nines. I think they're really going to see themselves, because you're a 9. And as a result of your doing the work, and, you know, I think it's going to be a great little torch on the path for them to think through, how do I become a person who's a more confident decision maker, somebody who doesn't get lost in the inner sanctum where I overthink things, you know, and how do I just become somebody who is spending a whole lot less time on, you know, sitting on the fence and wondering what to do and debating back and forth, and get to the things in life that will really bring me joy.
I hope so, because there's a lot at stake. I mean, what you think about from moment to moment, what you choose to pay attention to, that is what adds up to a life.
Yes. Couldn't ask for a better ending. Anne, thank you so much for being on Typology.
Thank you, Ian.
And of course, Typology listeners, don't forget the words of the great Oscar Wilde. Be yourself. Everybody else is already taken.